one of the things I've always wanted to ask you is whenever I talk to you, you're always so passionate about RDI. Where does that come from?
Oh, that's a good question. I remember, I started this process because I have a child who was diagnosed when he was 2.5. And there was no consultants in Canada at the time, so I decided that I would become a consultant. And I remember when I had to fill out the application process, it said, "Why do you want to become an RDI consultant?" And my answer was a little silly, but I said, "I finally know what I want to be when I grow up." But from the very beginning, as I began to learn about RDI, I started to view the world with what I call RDI lenses on, and the world became my oyster. It opened up for me, and I was able to see everything with such passion and such clarity and such interest and understanding. And how can you not be passionate about that?
Now, as a mom, what did you see as different? What was the attraction?
Different from anything that we'd been doing before. Well, we'd come from an intensive ABA background, and I didn't understand that there was any other way, because any professional in my life, including the government where I live, which only funds ABA, leads you to believe that that's the golden ticket. And then after immersing our whole family in it for a couple of years, I realized that my son was, sadly, no less autistic. He had all the skills that any other 4.5, 5-year-old had in terms of his understanding academically, but he was not able to have reciprocal, meaningful conversations. And we were quite connected, like he was a real cuddler. But I remember thinking that, you know what, he's not going to be able to succeed in this world without somebody right by his side. He lacks motivation to learn. And as well, he wouldn't even know that if he got off task at school, that he could reference somebody to see gee, I just missed something. What else is, what's going on? And I can just look at my neighbor, and now I know. And that was huge.
Now, you became a consultant, and I'm sure that opened up another level of world for you. So you've answered as a mom about RDI, but as a consultant, what is your passion for RDI?
Well, I finally have really meaningful work, something that's very satisfying. I mean, to make a difference in other people's lives is tremendous.
So we talk, and you and I have talked about this, that RDI is not just about our children, but also about the family. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, it improves quality of lives for the whole family, and so often we see that parents, moms and dads, start to come together in their understanding about how to help their children. It helps to bring families out of crisis. It helps the parents themselves learn to become more effective communicators and not to take that for granted. They become better advocators. Often the children, the other siblings are involved. It helps the family as a whole. I'm constantly reminded of that and told that by my families that I work with.
Well, I know I just spoke to a group at a conference of parents, and the thing that struck me was, and as a parent myself, but the attraction to something that is a family model. I mean, that is the only thing out there that considers the entire family.
It's pretty amazing. When I first start meeting with families, sometimes I'll even ask them when's the last time they went on a date. And that might be one of the things that we decide that should start to happen if it hasn't happened in the last, several years, which sadly sometimes is the case. So
very much so.
Yeah.
So now I want to just turn just a little bit to professionals. There's so many wonderful professionals helping so many children in many fields across the world. What would you say to professionals about becoming an RDI consultant? Let's say I have another discipline, we'll say. Why move toward RDI?
Well, I think that it's the missing piece. You know, they talk about autism as what's the phrase for autism about the puzzle?
Oh yeah, the brain, and then there's a piece out here
Yeah.
sitting on the side. The brain's
Yeah.
a puzzle, and there's the piece.
Yeah, yeah. So, so often I feel that other professionals are so passionate about what they do, but they just find that they're hitting some roadblocks in terms of how they can really, truly get at the underlying core of the issue. Whether it's SLPs or OTs or educators, it's has really changed the way that they're practicing with their families, and they're still utilizing, you know, all that wealth of knowledge that they have. But I think that they're just able to do it in a more confident way.
And when you said that, it just struck me that you know, we think of parents over here and professionals over here, but this both have in common this feeling, it sounds subjective, this feeling that something is missing. Mm-hmm. And I know, when I think of families I know or professionals I know, that they both feel this way.
They do. They do. So as a parent, I lived in this state of over-reliance on the other therapist in my son's life. And I can tell you, I remember one of my therapists leaving my home in a snowstorm, and I prayed to God for their safe return. And that was a really uncomfortable feeling. And then after I became empowered through RDI, I was just phasing out that program. And I mean, it was very early on, and I didn't feel competent, but I knew that I was going to have the tools. I was anticipating and predicting that, you know, this was it. And I can remember the therapist leaving my home and closing the door and saying, bye-bye. Now, I love these women. They were great, but, you know, it was just such a relief.
Let's talk to a parent who might be really struggling, maybe in overdependence on other folks, maybe feeling like they know nothing, which I felt forever. What would you say to that parent?
Well, I'd say that this is just a really good, mindful parenting program that helps to restore that relationship between you and your child so that you can collaborate with your consultant, but eventually they help transfer that responsibility over to you, where you can be really competent in knowing how to further your child's growth and development, which is just, I mean, you can then go out and teach other people how to do this. You can educate confidently your child's, if your child's in school, you can help the school understand your child better. You can make better evaluations and determinations about where your child should be at school, or whether, you know, and not just school, but any environment. You're able to really think about what is his best learning environment.
Now let's turn and
or
talk.
hers.
Indeed. Let's turn and talk for a moment. Let's talk to someone who's been thinking about going through maybe certification to become an RDI consultant. What would you say to that person?
I'm thinking back to the days when I did it. It was so long ago. I would say that, well, at this point, as I understand it, Dr. Shealy offers some nice opportunity to learn a little bit more about that process with her webinar series, so I would say to start there. I would say that it was a very worthwhile process in terms of the opportunity to gain the knowledge that I needed, then to embark on this process of supervision. And with today's technology, it's amazing, because I live in Canada, and the technology is, I mean, I wish that we would have had today what we had 10 years ago, because I used to have to send in VHS tapes. Well, now you can send in examples of your work to your supervisor via the internet with just, a couple clicks of a button. And it's so easy. And you can Skype, but you get this ongoing support and feedback to help you update the way that you're working with the family, as you go along. It's incredibly supportive. So.
And I think it's the most supportive professional community because, and you think about, we come together for annual conferences, we come together online for meetings, we have discussion groups that are going on, and there's such a, when you come into it as an individual, you think, well, here I am, a lone consultant, but really that's not true, is it? It's a body.
Oh, most definitely. I met some people here the last few days that I hadn't had a chance to meet, but I knew had been out. I hadn't met personally, and they just blew me away. And I'm gonna send them an email when I get back. But there's other people that we come together and we've actually developed traditions, and we'll Skype regularly. And this is just aside from what is available on our community, which is huge. If I'm really struggling and I've got a question, all I have to do is go in and then just make a little post on the professional forum, and the next thing you know, I could have a dozen responses, a wealth of information, different perspectives that I can kind of shift through and figure out what's going to be a best fit for my personal situation or professional situation.
Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you,
It's
Kat.
great visiting with you.